were just singing and you had thimbles, and I was like, this is what early years should be about. Now, I know this may be a little offensive to you, Julia, and potentially my mum, but Alice is probably my dream babysitter guest. What is the funniest thing that a child has ever said to you?
I used to want to be a milkmaid.
Pardon? That child's thinking on other levels.
I need to try and meet dinosaurs. So intriguing and enchanting and exciting.
Yeah, I knew you thought she said something else.
What did you think we'd invited you on here for?
Hello.
Hello.
And welcome to the very first episode of The Tiny Chair Pod!
Woo!
That is right. This is the EY podcast for people who spend all their days sat on chairs just like the ones we're sat in, with their knees up to their ears and not an adult chair in sight. We are for early years educators and leaders everywhere, and brought to you by family. But most importantly, Julia, who are you?
Hello, I'm Julia. I was an early years educator for many years. I started out as an apprentice and worked my way up to leadership, and I've also been a tutor and assessor of early years qualifications, so I've kind of seen a lot of the sector. But enough about me. Matt, who are you?
Well, my name's Matt. I work at Family alongside Julia here, and unfortunately have no real early years credentials apart from, being in them at one point myself. But I'm here anyway. Fail
Good.
upwards, Yep.
So,
On today's episode, we are very excited to be welcoming the amazing Alice Sharp. We're going to be talking about dads, about spoons, about tiny chairs, about the childhood of now, about technology. There is so much interesting stuff, and it's brought, of course, as always, with Alice's amazing, vivacious energy. I can't wait to get into it. What about you, Julia?
I can't wait.
Amazing. But maybe just quickly before we get in, seeing as how it is our very first episode, Julia, do you want to give everyone a quick rundown of what this podcast is all about?
I will. So, the Tiny Chair podcast, as Matt explained, is for early years educators, leaders, anyone in the sector really who's looking to have a bit of a laugh, a bit of fun, and just bring a bit of sparkle back to the early years. You won't end up with a CPD certificate, but we imagine people listening to this on their way to work just to get them hyped up and excited, ready for another day at the setting.
Love it. And we absolutely want you to be involved. So please do email us in with any questions for any of our guests. We're going to have an Agony Aunt, or in this case, Agony Alice section every week. We want to do wins and shout outs and celebrate the things that are great that are going in your settings. And of course, we want to hear your feedback, good and bad.
Not bad.
Right. I might not share the bad with you.
Don't tell me.
Me and Mickle can look at the bad. So that is, if you want to get in touch, just email us on tinychairpod@family.co.uk. That's tinychairpod@family.co.uk. And of course, as always, family is spelled Family without the I. I think it's time we get into it.
I think we should.
Yeah? Let's
ready.
go! Right then, so it's time to introduce our very first guest for our very first podcast. And Alice, even though you're already here, you're going to have to do that weird thing where you pretend like, we haven't just been talking for the last 20 minutes. And I do this big, lengthy introduction to you. Are you ready?
Yes.
Amazing. So Alice, like me, was once a child herself. She was, like Julia, once an educator. She was, like neither of us, a lecturer. We agreed that Julia didn't quite count as a lecturer. She did some trading stuff.
Don't think it counts.
Although sometimes I do feel lectured by you, but that's okay. She's also a keynote speaker, a trainer, a content creator, a product maker, and dare I say, an influencer. Maybe we'll get onto that. She's done Adventures with Alice. She does multi-day educator residency. She works in settings and with them. She recently launched her brand new early learning lab. And I have to be honest, I know this may be a little offensive to you, Julia, and potentially my mum, but Alice is probably my dream babysitter guest for my future yet unborn child, if I ever was in need of her services. Governments want her, educators want to be her, and she is maybe one day going to be the co-captain of the world's first early years pedagogy cruise if we ever get our stuff together. Alice, welcome to the Tiny Chair Pod.
Welcome, Alice.
Woohoo!
I am not sitting on a tiny chair, but I have surrounded myself with tiny chairs just for you.
I think we need to get into that straight away, don't we?
I want to hear more about these tiny chairs.
Talk to me about why it is that you have such a plethora of tiny chairs available.
I love materials. I love provocations and invitations to engage in curiosity. And so when I find objects, I become a bit obsessive. So I've got over 300 spoons. I have 28 mashers. I have a bag of 45 thimbles. And I was teaching recently, actually, down south, and I talked about thimbles, and I saw puzzled looks on people's faces, and I said to the 100 people in the room, put your hand up if you do not know what a thimble is.
Okay, and you had slowly raising hands, did you?
42 people. 42 people, Matt.
42 of 100, almost half.
Almost half didn't know what a thimble was, and when I showed them my bag of thimbles, they were so excited. So it's to get excited. So I found lots of little tiny silver chairs, and then I thought, I quite like those. And then I found a set of multicoloured wooden ones, and then some plastic ones, and pile-up ones, so I just collected them.
Perfect.
Do you know what? It worked as well, because as soon as we saw them, we were curious, we wanted to find out, we wanted to explore, we wanted to ask. So it's brilliant.
So
it's
true.
done the job.
So true. Can you, for the sake of the camera, I'd like to your favourite tiny
There's
chair.
even more over there. Look.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my goodness.
Out of shot. Can you show us your favourite one, Alice? Your best tiny chair.
My favourite one is this little silver one.
Yeah, it's perfect.
And I love, one of my favourite artists is Charles Rennie Mackintosh, and he is a designer of chairs, but beautiful, fabulous, really unique and unusual chairs. So I love walking through his little gallery in the Glasgow Art Gallery, and I want to sit in all the chairs, but you're not allowed.
Well, I wouldn't sit in any of these. I think that would be dangerous to everyone involved.
Yeah.
But I think we need to get into it, Julia.
I think we do. Now, before we get into the meaty questions, we've got a little section we like to call early years icks. So whether you're tired of truff toes, you're salty about soft play, there's always things in the early years that we think we've just had enough of. Now, I don't mean really bad practice, and I don't mean things that are harmful, but what is an early years ick for you, Alice?
What's an early years?
Ick.
Sitting on the tables that the children are going to play on.
Ooh, spicy. I like it. Tell us more.
You know, just the amount of staff sometimes that you see, and they're putting their bottom onto a table, and I am 3 and I had just planned to use the table to make my Play-Doh model, and your bottom's just been on it. I'm sorry. Ick.
Oh, love it.
I agree.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I would definitely just do that without thinking about it. I get it. And now I'm rethinking my whole life.
I mean, really, if you were going to chop up your orange or your fruit and you didn't have a plate, you know how sometimes you just put it on the table and you do it quickly, but somebody's bottom's just been under your orange or your apple?
I hate it when someone's bottom's been under my orange.
If I had a pound. Or
Julia,
a Scottish
what's your
pound.
early years ick? What are you bringing to the room for the first?
Oh, crumbs. That's a really good... Do you know what? I mentioned soft play in the introduction there, and I think it might be my... Do you know what? I think
Like a soft play centre?
Do you know why? The children love it, and there's plenty educationally there, but it's the smell. After a very short period of time, soft play, because of usually the barefoot rule, starts to have a certain odour to it.
Yeah.
And
I used to work in a soft play centre, and I can
good
confirm.
grief.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has
Can
a certain,
confirm
certain odour
cleaning
there,
it is
so-
not the funnest job I've ever had.
No,
in my
I
life.
can't imagine it. One of the things that I have done, Julia, with the soft play balls is I have cut them into segments, halves and quarters, and we have a big basket full of them now, and you can make the most amazing 3D models with the bits and pieces of the ball pool balls.
Oh, I love that.
Wow.
Love it.
Love that. I've always wanted to know what one of those looks like inside, you know?
Nothing.
Obviously nothing.
empty.
Obviously nothing. But like...
It looks like a concave outside.
The dream is over, Matt. There's nothing in there for you.
I had so
I'm
much
sorry.
higher ambitions
Wow.
from what was
Sorry.
inside those balls.
Right.
Right.
Rapid fire?
Rapid fire. So, unlike normal podcasts that do the deep and meaningful stuff first, and then we do the rapid fire at the end, we're kicking off with the rapid fire. So, first of all, Alice, what is the funniest thing that a child has ever said to you?
Oh gosh, what's the funniest thing? Well, I don't know if it's the funniest thing, but it made me kind of giggle to myself because I had no idea how to answer it. And he said, can you tell me why those particular colours are in the spectrum of the rainbow, Alice? And I'm like,
Yeah, Alice, why?
let me have a wee think about that, Tomas, and I'll come back to you.
What
love
a
that.
question,
A great
though.
question.
That child's thinking on other levels.
Yeah.
And another one was we were on one of the little islands off the west coast of Scotland in the school, and we had 2-year-olds to 7-year-olds sharing a room. And one of the submarine captains was in, and one of the little boys, Innes, said, "Which satellite navigation system have you got on board?"
Pardon?
And the captain had no idea, and he just looked at me and he looked at the other teacher and he was like, "I don't know." So I love the fact that children think big, deep, philosophical thoughts, and we have no idea of how to answer them. I think that makes me giggle.
Megan in our team said to me the other day that her, I think 5-year-old said to her the other day, like, Mum, can you explain to me how black holes are formed? And it was just like,
No, son, I absolutely cannot.
Not easy. Right, Julia, what's the next one?
Oh, what is something that parents worry about that they don't need to?
Oh my gosh, parents worry about that they don't need to worry about.
It's a big one.
What the children are going to be when they grow up. What they're going to be, because it'll change dramatically in the next 10 years. So even though I used to want to be a milkmaid. Because I lived in a rural community and I didn't drink milk, but I knew the cows needed to be milked, and I thought I want to be a milkmaid when I grew up. But did I become one? Absolutely not. Was I interested in it like 10 weeks later? No, I wasn't. And so, I know that as a parent, I've had those conversations with my husband. I wonder what the kids will be when they grow up. Stop wondering. It doesn't matter. Don't worry about it. They will become what they become.
I can't believe she didn't become a milkmaid. I was going to invite her on my milk podcast.
I just can't believe that, like, you wanted to be a milkmaid, but not through a love of milk, but through a love of the process.
I didn't even drink milk.
I just wanted to help the cows, because they needed to get rid of their milk. So that's what I thought. I was really a milkmaid.
I wanted to be the queen when I grew up. I thought that was a legitimate career path that you could choose. If you trained hard enough and really believed in yourself, you could sort of work your way up through the royal. I don't know. The reason was because I wanted to boss people about.
Nice. Well,
I had ambitions.
I'm sure Mickle sometimes feels like Right, next up, a children's book that you think if you could make every adult in the world read one children's book, what would that children's book be? What's a children's book that you think every adult should read?
The Dot by Peter and Paul Reynolds. And it's about a little girl called Vashti, and she is thoroughly depressed at the beginning of the book because she can't draw. And the teacher says, just make a mark. And in anger, she stabs the book. And the teacher says, wow, let's frame it. And she puts it on the wall, and Vashti's sitting. And the whole story is just about, just take that first wee step, and you can do anything. And at the end, she's telling all the children in her class, just make a mark and put it on the wall and sign your name. And it's just a glorious, beautifully simplistic illustrations that make a massive impact. And in fact, on our 4-day residentials, we sometimes use some of the content of that, some of the illustrations of that, to promote a kind of conversation about how to frame how we take our learning forward. And so I use it with adults, but I think it's a brilliant book.
Love it.
I love that.
We'll need to be getting that one for the library.
I was going to say, we'll get a copy for the office.
Anything by those authors are superb.
Oof, good to know.
I would like to know, what's something that we absolutely get right in the early years that the rest of the education sector should copy or should take on board?
Play, materials. As soon as the children go into a more structured, formal classroom situation, I can remember when I taught up the school, and we were doing the World War. And so I used the book When Hitler Stole Pink Rabbit. And I had created a little suitcase with a little pink rabbit in it and a little blanket and little bits and pieces that you would have had as a refugee,
How old are the kids?
They were about 9 and 10 probably at that point. Yeah. So, but the materials made that context meaningful for them. And so, every child has to be exposed to something that makes the context for learning, or so that the concepts and the processes I'm being taught are brought to life more, not by chalk and talk or iPads. And I know that technology is here and it's not going to go away, but materials, physical materials, so that I can completely and utterly engage my head, my hands, and my heart. Every part of education should be about that. Even if you're learning to do PhD in physics, astrophysics or something, they need to do materials.
Hell yeah.
Megan needs one of those, doesn't she, to explain black holes to her son, so we'll ask her. But I love that. I love that. Head, hands and heart, having something visceral, something tactile.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. Is it me?
I think it's you.
Okay. Oh, now we're tricky. So in your practice, you're running a setting. You're only allowed to keep 2 of the following. You're only allowed to have songs books, and tactile resources, and you've got to drop one. What are you dropping?
Oh, that's tricky.
The books.
The books.
So I'll have the songs. I will drop the books because I can make books out of the materials.
And out the
she's
songs.
good.
Yeah, nice. I feel like you've cheat coded our question.
I can make a 3D story, and I can create a yarn and a tale around the 3D stories without the pages of a book. But songs, I need to be using my voice for the songs.
I remember one of the first times I ever met you, Alice, was like years and years ago at the Nursery World show, and it was brilliant because you sort of had all these well-meaning lectures around the end that felt very serious and stern. And then I came into your one and you were just singing and you had thimbles, and I was like, this is what early years like lectures and workshops should be about. So I suspected you might have kept songs. I had my suspicions. Julia.
Speaking of, if you to answer a quiz on something that you think you could beat any member of the public at, and it cannot be early years related.
Yeah. So 100 random members of the public.
Yep.
And you get to choose the quiz question so that you can optimize it so that you can win. What would you pick?
Yeah.
Ooh, what would I pick? Probably something around art, the elements of art. I'm fascinated by artists. I know quite a lot about them, not their history and stuff, but I know their reasons for making the marks that they made because I've done extensive reading on that. So I guess it would be okay to answer some of them questions.
Yeah.
Definitely not sport. Definitely not like physics. Definitely not anything too complex at all. But something through beauty and aesthetics. Yeah.
Great. Well, when it gets to the pub quiz, you can bring me on for the sport round, and you can bring Megan's son on for the physics round. So.
Okay. What about Julia? What do you want to come on for?
What are you offering?
Oh, crumbs! I didn't think I was going to have to answer these. Anything sparkly.
Just the history of sparkles.
The history of sparkles. Yeah. If it's glittery.
Glittery and sparkly, okay. I also, Julia, hope you don't mind me saying, I think you could do a t-shirt thing because every time I see you have something different on your t-shirts.
Oh, lovely.
You won't believe how disappointed Michael was when I came in with a white t-shirt this morning to the studio.
Somebody's letting the side down, aren't they?
I think it's time to go on. Not just because my back is already starting to hurt from this tiny chair.
All right, let's move on.
But I think it's time to get into the meat of the interview. That was a good start, Alice.
Let's do it.
So when we called you up a few weeks ago and said, Alice, we want you to be our inaugural guest on the pod. And
we said it exactly like that.
I think I did.
You did. You rolled the R and everything.
Yeah. I said, we said, what should we talk about? What should be our kind of subject? And you were talking about, Generation Beta and the kids who are going to be coming next. And we said, well, why don't we talk about exactly that, the kind of childhood of now? And yeah, I guess just to start off, what are you thinking about? You're always looking to the future, right? I think you've said to me, what are we going to do with the next generation of children? How's it going to change? And like, why is that something that's top of mind for you?
I think when you get to kind of be mature like I am, and you've been doing it for 35 years, you kind of start to think, I say this all the time, and I maybe shouldn't say it, but I'm going to say it again, is that I love Fribble and Montessori and Steiner and Vygotsky and Brunner and Piaget and all the rest of it, but they have never met the children that we have in our nurseries. And so we can take some of their principles and values, certainly, but and we've been very voicey, very kind of noisy, I guess, in the sector about we shouldn't be getting the children ready for school. We shouldn't be getting them ready for the future. But actually, I'm not suggesting we don't play for today. Play should be all about today. But we as an adult that is shaping and extending and enabling the children need to keep an eye on the future, because the future is coming at us fast and furious. I think the statistics were, so that this year's generation is called Beta, born in January, for the next 15 years at the moment are being called Generation Beta. And Generation Alpha was the one before that. But by 3035, which is only 10 years away, by 3035, 16% of the population will be made up of Generation Beta. 16% of the population will be made up of the children who are just about to be born. That blows my mind. And so we need to look and see, well, what is their little world looking like so that I can provide play that is building the right foundations? Because if we keep building the wrong foundations, the children are going to crumble.
So interesting. And I guess we've I feel like there's so much in the discourse and narrative around, baby boomers and Generation X and millennials and, obviously also, what's the sort of last, Generation Z? Gen Z.
Oh, Gen Alpha are the...
And so Gen Alpha are then the next
Alright.
ones. Maybe that's a good starting point. Like, what do we already know today about the last bit, about those children, Generation Alpha, that have maybe just been through our settings?
Well, the generation, if you flip it a bit as well, because the Generation Z, millennials, are most of the parents of these
Sure.
alphas and the betas. And so the reality is that, the science, not me, the science says that those parents are the most selfish generation, the most self-absorbed generation, the most, self-obsessed generation. But equally,
That's me and you, Julia.
they're the ones that are going to save the planet. Climate change is on their agenda. They're the ones that are going to live a healthier life than the previous generations because they don't drink as much alcohol, take as many drugs, and Well, generally. And so there's positive and negative about all of them. But Generation Alpha, they were born into this world of technology, always having internet access at the tips of their fingers. We've now got 2 and 3 year olds that would prefer to watch an iPad because they're obsessed by volcanoes. And they're obsessed by volcanoes and they're watching all of the YouTube clips on volcanoes and they're learning. They're definitely learning and taking on board knowledge and understanding. But oh my gosh, there's nothing more exciting than doing the exploding volcano in the playroom.
Yeah.
Really kind of feeling as if you're part of it. And so Generation Alpha are caught, I feel really torn for them because they're caught in between this changing world and this really fast changing world. And the predictions for the betas are, they're going to all be wearing these watches.
Oh yeah.
That tell you everything that you need to be knowing, yeah? And their phones are going to be listening to them and they're going to be annihilated by adverts that are completely about what they want. And if they're desperate for, I don't know, the latest games console and they're being given and fed adverts about it, they're going to find a way to do that. So, there's so much technology intrusion into their real lives that we have to find a way of the play, the physical play, the play in our services are competing with that. So how do we compete with that? Big data is going to be massive for the Generation Beta because the data companies are analysing the data from individuals so much more than they ever did.
Sounds terrifying, doesn't it? Gosh.
A bit scary.
It is a bit scary.
But the pitch is sort of... But the idea, I guess, is sort of like how do you balance that they're going to be so much more natural with technology. And so you want to bring that into your practice in some ways. You don't want to kind of leave them behind or maybe leave those children behind who are not necessarily getting such a good starting point. But you more feel like the value of the educators is to bring the real in more into their practice.
And bring the real in that the computer programmers, the data analyzers, they all have to start somewhere. So for me, our job is to give them the skills that will allow them to program, the skills that will allow them to analyze the data, the skills which are not massively different to the ones that we have been sharing with the children, but it's more about the science is telling us it needs to be more about the soft skills than the meta skills. So do we keep teaching the Vikings? Do we keep teaching them all of the subjects, or do we hone in on these skills for life skills, so that as we go up and we become isolated in our job role, everything else is about connection. So it might be that our jobs become isolated and insular, but we then need to have the skills for everything else, and that needs to become really more important than our jobs.
I mean, with that in mind, and with all of the information that we have about Generation Beta, what do you think is something we should be focusing on in our practice and our provision right now that we can either change or introduce to support families and the childhood of now?
I guess there's 2 things really. These hyper personalised adverts that they're all being thrown at can be translated to hyper personal experiences, and so that we tend to try and kind of do plans for every child. But if I am in charge of a room of 45 children, that's nigh on impossible. And so what we need to do is find a way to, if 3 little children are excited by dinosaurs, I need to try and make dinosaurs so intriguing and enchanting and exciting that 14 of them want to be excited by dinosaurs. You know, and while the other children over here are obsessed by space travel, that I try again and make that as exciting as possible for more than just the 2 children that were excited, that everybody gets excited. And actually that's taken me back the way, because for a wee while, and I'm rubbish at podcasts and interviews and stuff because I keep talking, and I know it's supposed to be a
what you're here
conversation,
for.
but
It's
it would
all
be
about
really
talking.
boring if it was just me and Julia the whole time.
No, I know, but it's supposed to be a conversation, and I'd like to ask your opinions as well, but I want to get it out of my mouth. And so for me, for about the last 5 or 10 years, we've become obsessed by child-led play. And child-led play is the most successful play, there's no doubt about it, but it doesn't mean we abandon the children. And for me, we were told we weren't to do projects, we weren't to do backdrops, we weren't to do focuses and themes and all that kind of stuff. So you hardly see them happening anymore. But if I got children, a group of 15 children excited about dinosaurs or space travel, I would go back to Lillian Katz's work on the project approach, because there's a formula there that works. And for me, if I scaffold and start to use that formula again, I will get not just 14 or 15 of the children, but everybody will want to do space travel. You know, and so we'll teach the maths, and we'll teach the science, and we'll teach the language through that project, or whether it lasts for 3 days or it lasts for a week. You know, I wouldn't want it to be lasting for any longer than that, but we tend to shy away from that. And for me, if we want hyper personalised experiences based on what the children have been fed, and that's the prediction of what beta will look for, then we can already do that really easily in nursery.
Yeah, I think top of mind to me, a couple of things when you were talking there, is the first thing is that we have to embrace the idea that, like, it's about scale a little bit, right? In settings. You're dealing with many children, and so of course I love the idea that you like choose one child's interest and then try to draw other people into that, because you have to handle the scale problem, right? We all know in a perfect world, if we could have 1-to-1 ratios, wow, how amazing that would be, but it just doesn't work, right? And so I don't know, I thought about that. And then the other thing was that, you know, me and Julia have both had the pleasure of talking to so many people over the years. I think one of the reasons I love talking to you so much is because I think you tread that line between different versions so much. I feel like social media, trying to come up with fancy conference titles, all this stuff, it makes people feel like it's one or the other, but it doesn't have to be child-led or adult-led or, you know, sequencing or following child's interests. There's so much balance, right?
Well, the point, I think Alice made the point perfectly when she was saying that it's child-led, but that doesn't mean we're not following. Like, the point is the child's leading the play, and that you're following along and scaffolding and supporting and introducing resources and asking the right questions. It's not child-led in that it's like, well, they've chosen the cars, so I'll see you in 15 minutes, probably go and have a cup of tea then. Like, that's not what that is. Like,
otherwise they will just take the trikes and go round and round in circles for hours.
Oh yeah, and if you think about it really realistically, because I never lead play with a learning intention or an aim or a statement or anything, but it doesn't mean I don't intend learning to happen. If I put out my bowl of 42 spoons, of course I know that children are going to sort them by wood, and they're going to categorise them into metal or big or small, or ones with jewels on and ones. I obviously know they're going to do mathematics, and then I might ask a question, and then I might echo a comment, and so we have a huge role to play in that, you know. And it's the same with the biggest thing for me is that the predictions of the alphas and the betas is that they're growing up in a really massively global environment now. And we talk about diversity and inclusion all the time, but I think what we need to go back to are the 6 core strengths of children that we've talked about for years. So as much as I'm looking to the future, I'm relying on I guess that the core strengths came from somebody's theory. I don't know who I would align it to really, but two of the last core strengths for me, or for everybody, are about respect and tolerance. And respect and tolerance is about inclusion and diversity, but we don't do it properly. We don't do it correctly. And, you know, we don't do it well enough. And so we still need to think about that, because these children that they have friends. But as soon as they're doing a game online, you can see how often I play a game online. Can't
Yeah,
you?
I can
don't
see.
know what
No,
to
that's
do.
what it looks like.
That's what it looks
I've
like.
seen
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
But the reality is that I know 4 and 5-year-olds who are speaking to somebody in Germany and somebody in France on a game. That I'd never even heard of France and Germany, I think, when I was 5. And so their world is so
Glad
much
you said
bigger,
when I was 5.
so much bigger and vast, that we need to find roots into that. And the other two that I am a bit obsessed by just now, core strengths, are affiliation and attunement. Because we spend an inordinate amount of time on the first two, attachment and self-regulation, and affiliation and attunement, because self-regulation and attachment are really important in a smaller situation, but attunement and affiliation are vibrant in a room
In
with
a
40
community,
children in it.
yeah.
You need to have those strengths, and you need to understand what your agency looks like in that situation.
So interesting.
Can I ask?
Go on.
You've talked about getting a room full of children excited about a specific topic, about space or about dinosaurs. Can you explain how you get a room full of people excited about A4 paper?
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, again, it's like the story of the dot, isn't it? That when that little girl in that story started to make a dot, she became obsessed by making dots. And then she did so many dots that she left a dot in the middle, and it just explodes. And so if you think about an A4 bit of paper, but it doesn't need to be white. It could have spots on it, and you're going to rip it. And you rip it into different strips. You can then make a square with it or a triangle with it. Or you could bend them, or you could fold them, or you could make them into a fan. I mean, I've got 50 things to do with a piece of A4 paper now, guys. And so I would make it exciting by modelling and demonstrating. So I would sit with my bit of my A4 paper, and I would start to rip it. And then I would roll it round my finger and hope that 2 or 3 children would come over and say, "What are you doing?" or watch me and try and do it too. Or I'd say, "Sorry, can you give me a help here?" Yeah, or I would talk to myself. I would pole bridge, talking my thoughts aloud. I don't have a bit of A4 paper here, but I've got a little bit of Play-Doh. So I'm going to squash my Play-Doh. I'm going to smooth it out. I'm going to make it even on the surfaces. I'm talking my thoughts aloud so that I'm calling attention to the children, and they might copy and take their learning forward as well. So it's all
amazing.
about us being the biggest resource a child has access to. And we need to be the resource, not just sit there like a lump of lard.
I know that Julia's got a bit that she wants to run into now, but I have to ask, because while you were talking, I was just thinking the idea of being the interest that attracts the children to the learning is such a key skill of any educator. And I'm thinking, for whether it's leaders out there who maybe have some younger educators, I know you also, or people maybe who are starting out their career in early education for the first time, like the thing that's always impressed me about you, Alice, is just you have this inherent creativity and passion to just, and I think that's what we want to instill in all of our educators. Like, what is the best way that you've instilled that sense of creativity and, vibrancy and imagination into the educators that you've trained and worked with? Like, how do you work with them on that?
To be honest with you, I think it's by watching the children. I know that I've been affected by my 2 go-to are Fribble and Vygotsky. They're the 2 people that I would have read the most when I was becoming a pedagogue. Yeah. But when I tell a story, I don't tell stories about them. I tell stories about children.
Right.
I notice the actions, emotions, and words of the children, and they fill me with joy, and they make me want to be creative. Yeah, but equally too, so do the staff adults. So yesterday I was teaching, and I was doing an update on treasure baskets. So I was calling it texture troves and treasure trugs, because I didn't want to use
lovely
treasure
alliteration.
Great alliteration.
And so they're all over here behind in this space here, and there's 42 of them with collections with objects in it. But one of the things that we were doing, we little wooden caterpillars that you can take bits off and then put them back onto. But I was using it as a rhyme and a song, as Matt says I like to sing. And I kind of demonstrated with a young staff member, 23-year-old, and I held her hand. I put my hand, she put her hand here, and I put my hand tickling the top. And then I asked the delegates to do it. And they all didn't put their hand under the hand. They just did this top bit. And I immediately said, oh my gosh, just stop, everybody. Look around the circle and see how many of you have cupped the hand of the one you're touching and then touching from the top. And hardly any of them had done it. And they said, but we didn't think of that. I said, I know, but oh my goodness. We've just talked about how important touch is. Physical touch, loving, nurturing, sensitive relationships. And me supporting you, saying, this is okay. I'm going to tickle you, but it's all right. It's okay. I'm giving you bravery. I'm giving you courage. And they got it. Now, 5 years ago, I wouldn't have done that. 5 years ago, I would have thought, I don't want to embarrass them.
Yeah, wow.
Because I don't want them to think I'm judging that they're not good enough. They're not doing it the way I want them to do it. But now I've got to the stage where I think, if I don't tell them, who will?
Yeah.
Is that not my job as a facilitator of learning to kind of highlight this is, and we were giggling more. We were giggling more and we were feeling more, and our senses were alive because we had two hands sandwiched. Our hand was sandwiched in beside two others. And so, I don't know if I answered the question. Can't even remember what the question was. Sorry.
It was a good answer.
It was a great answer.
It's an amazing answer.
Doesn't matter what the question was.
No. Julia.
Yes.
Why are you interrupting this amazing first episode with Alice?
Well, I have a problem.
Okay.
The problem is thus. I am in the market for an early childhood platform.
Interesting.
It must have excellent parent communication.
Right.
It needs to be able to handle my bookings and occupancy.
Sure.
I need to be able to send invoices and for parents to pay in-app.
Absolutely.
And it has to have amazing learning journals for children as well.
And how about if, they also make a podcast called the Tiny Chair Podcast? Would that be something you'd be interested in?
Even better.
Well, then I think I have the solution. You need family. The sponsors of this and every single Tiny Chair podcast for, the rest of time, because it's where we work.
Okay, where can I find them?
All you need to do is type family into Google, remove the I so that you have FAMLY, and then, if Google says, did you mean family? Just say, no, I meant this. Click on our website, and then you can get a free demo and maybe buy it for your nursery today. Sound pretty good?
Yeah, I'm sold.
Nice. Let's get back to the pod. Julia, it's time for our next bit. It's time for blind ranking.
Do you know what? We have talked a lot about resources, and I'm very, very excited for this bit, Alice. So have you ever done a blind rank before?
What? No.
Okay. Well, so I'm going to list 5 resources for you. You're not going to know what resource is coming next, but you have to assign it a rank 1 to 5. So 1 is your favourite resource ever. You could never get rid of it. It's wonderful. It's the best resource. Number 5.
I don't know what's coming next.
You don't know what's coming next. You've got it.
Therein lies the jeopardy.
Right, okay. I've not done this before. Right, okay.
Okay. Well, we'll give it a try and we'll see how it works. So the first resource you have to rank 1 to 5 is a specific Danish brand of connecting bricks.
Otherwise known as Lego.
They haven't sponsored us, Matthew.
Oh.
Don't use the name.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, I would say, now this is personal. It's not, is it what I would rank them for me or for the children?
Oh, interesting. Gosh. I don't have that on my little card here. What do we do? I'm panicking.
I think for, for your practice,
for you. Right.
Let's say.
Okay, so I'll do it for both. Okay, so for children, I would say 4. For me, 2. It doesn't excite me, but children seem to be excited by it.
Wait, so then it should be the other way around, no? Because 1 is the best.
Sorry.
1 is the best.
Right, okay. So 1 is the best?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right, okay, sorry. Right, okay, so I'm a 4 and the children are 2.
Perfect.
Okay,
are you
great.
remembering this? Because Matt's got to do a recap in a minute. So.
I think I've got it.
Okay. The second resource to rank is paint.
Oh, now... So if it was liquid you had said to make marks with, that would be a different answer. But if it's just paint, that's kind of boring. So again, I'm going to give it, for me, probably a 4. But for children, a 3.
Okay. All
right. Much more exciting if you gave me toothpaste, treacle, or some washing up liquid to paint with. That would have been better.
Nice.
I love this. Inspirational. I love this. The next one, you're not going to like this then, is Play-Doh.
Okay, so 3 and 3.
Okay. You still on track?
I think you've used 3. You've used 3 for the children.
Shoot. Right, okay. Oh, man. So Play-Doh...
So far we have Lego at 2 for the kids, and 3 is... Paint. So you've got 1, 4 and 5 left for the children.
So Play-Doh can be 4.
4, okay.
Lovely.
So we've got 2 left, and we've got 1 and 5 free.
Okay.
Exciting.
The next resource is the home corner. Ooh, Ooh, where are we putting it?
I need to know what you're doing. No, it can't be a 5, so it needs to be a 1.
Oh, drama.
Because if you think about the population of the world,
I do.
and you think about their homes,
Often.
and the children that don't have lovely, beautiful, comforting, loving homes, the home corner in our spaces and places need to be spectacular. They need to be the best home they can possibly be. So they should be a 1.
Okay.
I love that.
Last
I love
resource.
that. The
It's
last
gonna be
resource
5.
then is Alice Sharp's Eco Builder World.
Okay. And gosh, my gosh. Well, it has to be a 5, but it's not. It shouldn't be sitting at a 5.
No.
Absolutely not.
I love designing that product, and we have just come up with 3 extension kits for it, guys, which are going to rock the planet.
Nice. That was a good opportunity for a
Yeah,
plug.
plug that.
So where we ended up was number 1, home corner.
Yes.
Number 2, Lego. Number 3, paint. Number 4, Play-Doh. Number 5, Alice Sharp's Eco Builder World. Not
I'll
happy.
do that.
You're
I'll
okay
do
with
that.
it?
Some
Very
people
humble of
find-
you.
Some people will find it as a 5, but I wouldn't put it at 5.
No.
course
Can I
not.
just? This bit might need to be cut out. This bit.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, sure.
Nice.
When you said blind ranking,
Yeah, I knew you thought she'd said something else. What did you think she'd said?
What did you think we'd invited you on
I'm-
here for?
I didn't think you'd be sitting alongside each other doing it, guys. That's for sure.
Look, for the right paycheck, I...
At first
we
I
were-
thought, was that what they said? No, they maybe said blind dating. No, we're not doing that either. So what we doing?
Okay, amazing.
Wow.
Well, you know,
I'm
we
looking
were.
forward to listen to it back.
Yeah, I'm now very worried about how well you pronounce that B.
Maybe it was like a Elmer Fudd sort of...
Yeah,
Yeah,
could be,
okay.
or a fuzzy duck situation.
All right.
Well, we're getting into the back end of the podcast now, but we did have a few more questions we wanted to ask you, and actually, I did do a little research before
Sneaky.
we jumped on, and I actually texted. I have 2 impressive people in my phone book. One of them is Alice Sharp. The other one is Alice's. Well, okay, not
Me?
you. Sorry,
Not me.
no.
Okay. All right.
The other one is your good friend June O'Sullivan.
Dun, dun, dun.
And I texted June, say we're interviewing Alice next week. What should we ask her about? Which is a dangerous question to ask a good friend. And she said 2 things to me. She said you should ask her about her dad's work and spoons. Which one do you want to take first?
When you said her dad's work, I thought you meant my dad.
Yeah, I think that's what.
I know what she meant.
Okay, right.
Oh,
Good.
okay.
I thought she meant your dad's work.
No,
too.
she didn't mean my dad. So, I guess
Oh.
we have always tried as a team to work with different people. So we've worked with prisons, we've worked with people who have been sex trafficked to this country. We have worked with extensively with children and extensively with young people to do their training. But we got really excited a few years ago when we had groups of mums who had left school with no qualifications or little qualifications, had had their family, and were now looking to come back into the world of work. And so we had 2 cohorts of mums, and then we decided, alongside Glasgow City Council, who funded it, to take some dads on. To say they were rough round the edges is an understatement. And we interviewed them and we took them on, and their backgrounds were so very diverse. Some of them had no qualifications. Some of them weren't even dads. One of the brilliant young men, he was an uncle who was looking after his 2 nieces who, because their mum and dad were heroin addicts, and so all sorts of people. And so we did the qualification with them. So we took them through their level 2. We then took them on to their level 3. Some of them went on and did level 4, and 90% of them are doing a degree now, and 3 already have a degree.
That's incredible.
And so it was just amazing. And we did lots of enriched, as well as the qualification. Like, I asked in class one day, how many of them, what art they had on the walls. And they were like, what do you mean? And I said, well, what's on your walls in the house that your children are being inspired by? And none of them had art on their walls. You know, well, we might have photographs. So we took them to the art gallery. And to tell you that I had 3 6-foot very Glaswegian men dancing round in the art gallery with golden ribbons because the painting we were being inspired by was 3 girls dancing round a maypole. That's exactly what we did. And we went into the Rennie Mackintosh, because I always go there, into the room with the big chairs. And I had my little chairs. And I had rose petals, because Rennie Mackintosh is famous for his rose designs. He uses nature a lot. He's a biophilic. And the chairs. And so they took a chair each, and then they created a design with the rose petals on the floor of the art galleries. Now, these guys had left school, had been in prison, had you name it, they'd done it. And they'd never experienced anything like that. We then took them to a tiny little island off the west coast of Scotland, Iona, because the head teacher, the nursery staff member, the janitor, everybody was a man. And so we took the men to the men.
Wow.
And 2 of the guys had never left Glasgow, never mind being on a train, and then two ferries to get to a tiny island.
Wow.
And we spent 3 days on the island with them. And so that was just glorious. And so that work then led us on to taking grave diggers and florists who'd been made unemployed on to do the same thing.
Wow.
It's amazing. I'm going to text June back and say she should have framed that her work with dads.
Yeah, we both thought, what does Alice's dad do? What could it be?
Very mysterious.
This is better.
This is
incredible. Yeah.
I think it's just a sign that if you can get that cohort to be dancing around an art gallery with ribbons, then it really does increase my theory that you can make anyone do anything. I'm slightly scared of your skills.
You not make them do it, encourage them to
Encourage them, sorry. Gently manipulate. Yeah, I get it.
Entice them.
Incredible.
Yeah, and then I guess, kind of like to finish off a little bit, we wanted to ask you a few more questions about you and, you know, maybe what's next for you and what you look back on with fondness. I think an interesting question I want to ask is, what's the best piece of advice that you've ever received throughout your career, Alice?
Now, somebody asked me that recently, and I'm going to flip it back to June. And interestingly, June and I met over 28 years ago, and I didn't really like it. She was too important and full of articulation of...
She's going to see this, you know.
Still is, to be honest. You know, I guess I was overwhelmed by her, but at the same time, I was obsessively interested in what she did. And one occasion when we were in her nurseries in London, and she paused at the door before she went into a playroom, and I paused because she had paused, and she said, you need to do this. She said, you need to pause before you go in the door, any door, to meet a child. And you need to think, am I bringing my best self, not your whole self, but your best self to this child? And so that for me kind of changed so when I meet a door in a playroom or in a nursery now, I always kind of just pause just slightly and think, here we go.
Wow.
It's nice. I'm going to start doing that every time before I come into this podcast studio from now on.
Wait, you didn't bring your best self this time?
I'm worried that I didn't. I didn't pause. I came straight in. You know?
I brought my mediocre self.
Who knows? Julia, what do you want to ask?
I would love to know, and I wonder if it'll be related to what you just spoke about, but what would you like to be remembered for? Bit macabre, sorry about that.
No, that's really interesting. My husband and I have just had that conversation at the weekend. I'd been away for a couple of days and I came back and he kind of spoke at me for about 2.5 hours.
I do that with my girlfriend all the time.
He hadn't had anyone to speak to since I'd been away. And so we were chatting about that, and I don't know that I don't need a memory of me, but I guess that I hope, what legacy have we left? Gosh, I asked people that and now you're asking me, I don't know the answer. I hope I have highlighted how important it is to take a wee bit of time in anything that you're doing, and I mean, I do it through singing, so I don't go on holiday. I don't, I work 80, 90 hours a week because I love what we do. Why would you choose to do anything else. And so I'm lucky because lots of people don't have jobs that they feel like that about. But there's, I don't sit and meditate or mindfulness or yoga or anything like that. I don't do that. But what I do is I do take a time out to sing, just to sing. Today I'm driving in the car today I'm driving in the car. What can I see today? I can see a sheep in the field, a big red bus, a handsome man in the articulated lorry that's parked beside me. So
Hello, sir.
That just takes me out. So I guess singing, the joy of finding yourself somewhere else. And I know that people talk about books being windows into other worlds, and interestingly, singing, but I never go to concerts. I don't listen to music ever.
Why would you listen to other people sing when you got pipes like that?
Well, do you know what?
Completed it.
That's bizarre though, but even when I'm saying that to you, I think, wow. Or spoons, you can do any curriculum in the world. I have not met a curriculum that you can't do without spoons. And I was once in the London Underground and a woman tapped me in the shoulder and said, "Are you the spoon lady?" And I said, "I might be."
That's pretty nice. Yes, at your service. I love it.
I mean, that was beautiful, but 80 to 90 hours a week. Alice, you've got to take a break.
I just know. Why would you? Like last night, I worked. I was on a tour call in America last night. I'd been on a call to Canada before that. I'd been teaching all day, and I came here at 5 o'clock this morning.
I'm very impressed.
I'm impressed. I mean, I know we were talking about remembering you, but like, crumbs, we're going to be remembering you too soon if you carry on at this pace.
Get yourself some rest, Alice.
Yeah, have a rest. Do you know what, though? On singing, we should have brought that into the podcast. Do you think next week we should do it all in song, like an opera?
I think so.
That would be brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe we'll get you back for podcast 100 and it's an opera.
It's an opera.
If we get that far, that's
one of our young educators, in fact, two of the educators that we use for our early learning labs are opera trained. So they do lots of drama and singing and stuff with the children. And Bella especially, she's on stage in the West End just now actually doing singing.
Okay, amazing. Perfect. I mean, I obviously have an exceptional voice as well. I won't be sharing it with you now, but it's brilliant, just trust me. So brilliant. Episode 100 on opera. Love it.
Done. I think then the final question we want to ask you before we get on to talking a little bit about the Early Learning Lab and what else you've got going on is, I think we touched on it a little bit already, but I think it's a really important question for those people listening out there. What do you think is something that holds educators back the most in their practice that you would love to kind of wheedle out of them? What do you think holds people back from being their finest form beyond pausing before they go in the door?
I guess believing that they're not good enough, believing that they've not got something to offer, and all a child needs is somebody sitting beside them with their leg touching their leg, or a smile, or a gesture, or a quiet whispered word. And yes, we need much more than that a lot of the time, but that's one thing that when we were interviewing students or staff, you can't teach that. You can't teach that want to be a part of someone else's life, and to be alongside that other person. But you can teach them all they need to know about child development, or all they need to know about physical development or language development. You can gain all that knowledge, but it's something in your heart that you have, and I don't think people see that in themselves, because nobody's ever pointed it out to them. And so I think that probably.
That's beautiful, gosh.
During that beautiful moment, I want to note that Julia knocked out my headphones with her high-heeled Crocs. So if I gave a slightly strange face at any point during that while you were having that very nice moment, I want to explain that's why it was.
Sorry, I wanted to exclude you and just share it with Alice.
Yeah, I can see that. But Alice, tell us a little bit about the Early Learning Lab. This is something you've just launched. It's been an amazing project. We want to hear more about it. We want to help you get it out there to everyone, because I think this should be in every single setting everywhere. I
think it's interesting. I guess we started the podcast at talking about generations, and I guess that when we're out and about in all the schools and the nurseries, we see younger educators who live very different lives to us, and through no fault of themselves are not as verbal as some of the other staff. They're not as demonstrative as other staff. They're not as eager to anticipate and scaffold and interact with the children. And so we thought, how do we share knowledge with them rather than the way we maybe have in the past. So we decided to peel all the noise away, all the visual noise away, because we don't have time. Once you're in that room with these children, you're in that room with those children, you're on it, and you don't have time to really think about the play. So we took 3 at a time, 3 young educators between 19 and 26, and we put them in a white room with one piece of equipment. So we gave them wooden blocks. We filmed them playing with the wooden blocks. They talked, they interacted, they built, they did what you would think they would do. We then took that away after about 15 minutes and gave them reflective blocks, did the same thing. Iridescent blocks, tiny blocks, stickle brick blocks. So we gave them 9 sets of blocks and we filmed them with nobody telling them what to talk about or what to do. And then we filmed the children using those blocks as well. And some of the educators, Bella was in one of the ball play ones I can remember being filmed. And then Mary, my colleague, and I have what we have in the UK is a programme called Goggle Blocks, where basically 2 people are watching the television of the last week.
It's
so
less
Maddie
dystopian than it sounds.
Yeah, well, yeah. And so Maddie and I watched the videos, but we paused them and kind of talked about, like at one point one adult had said, well, I'm happy with my model now and blah, blah, blah. And we commented on the stage of the block playing. So we put the theory interspersed it. So it's now become little 5-minute videos. We've written a book to go along with it, and really interestingly, when we were writing the books, I've actually got one here. When we were writing the books, we asked the young educators what should the books look like, and they said no words, and I was like, what is that a book?
What?
And no words, because we listen to podcasts.
Whoa.
And we watch films, and we don't read. And unless it's subtitles, and I said, I don't know the technology to put subtitles in. Sorry, I need clips and all that jazz. And so, but what that did is that made Mary and I, when we were writing the books, really peel away all the unnecessary words and put in the most important words. But 2 weeks ago, guys, I noticed Bella, one of the young educators, in one of the playrooms, just before she went into the block area, she picked the book up and she just flicked it and she did this. And she played, and at the end, when she came away, I said, actually, Bella, what were you doing with the book? And she said, well, yesterday we were sorting and matching and building higher than and broad. So we were doing loads of maths yesterday. And today I thought I would try and scaffold it differently. And she picked up this book with just this amount of words in it.
Yes.
And she said, that's too higher order. So we designed and we hypothesized today. And I was like, wow. Now, if I had given her not that book with hardly any words in it, but one of these books, which has got hundreds of words in it, she wouldn't have time to do that.
All of this book showing is going to go down great on the audio-only version of the podcast.
I forgot we were recording. I'm just showing you. But it was just fascinating in that it works. Peeling all the unnecessary words away in the book made it really relevant and helpful as an educator. And then we've given them a reflective tool in it. So we've made a block one, we've made balls, we've made small world. And the feedback's brilliant so far. So and your whole team can do it. And it's taught me, a 35-year-old, not 35-year-old, oh my God, I wish, a 35 years ago trained teacher, revisit my understanding and knowledge about block play, ball play, and small world play.
Do you know, if you haven't actually seen these videos yet, you absolutely must, because I want to tell you, Alice, for me, when I was watching them, it felt like I was doing a ride-along observation with you and Mary. And I really felt like I was sitting on the other sofa with you both, and you were saying, oh, well, I noticed this, I noticed that. And I'm shouting at my computer going, oh, me too, I saw that. And I thought it was really interesting how he did that too. And then he said this. And I wanted to engage in that conversation because it was inspiring, and I wanted to take part too and talk to you. And I just thought, gosh, this is such an amazing resource for when you're learning about observing and learning about the things you might notice in children's play and development. And it really felt like being sort of coached along, like I was there as well.
And we're just about to, we've got 6 leadership modules. In fact, we could maybe do something with family about it, but 6 leadership modules that June O'Sullivan, myself, a rural specialist and a professor have created these videos. And basically the videos are us arguing, discussing and debating about
Perfect.
Lovely.
aspects of pedagogy, but I have come across so many little standalone nurseries, not the big chains or the big groups, but a little nursery for 24 children, and they've got 5 staff, and they have nobody at their level of conversation. And so for me, the young people that are watching the lab, for instance, we talk about as being co-researchers with the children and each other. We don't have time to do any of that.
Yeah.
But actually just taking 5 minutes to watch somebody else researching a material and then thinking I'm going to go and use that with the children now is so helpful.
Yeah,
Love it.
absolutely.
Amazing. But then we're on to our very, very final section.
Oh, I love this bit.
Our Agony Aunt section, which for today we're calling Agony Alice.
Which is brilliant. I think next week, if we have somebody without such good alliteration,
We might have to continue to call it Agony Alice now.
yeah,
I
doesn't
think
matter.
it's just is Agony Alice. I think
sure,
that's fine.
whatever. Yeah,
From now on
whatever.
in.
Whatever the name of the guest, it's fine.
And you know how much I love singing, because we've mentioned it. There's an old program called Agony, and Maureen Lipman was the actress in it. And there's a agony. I'm 16 and I'm feeling kind of on the shell. Sometimes I get a funny pain. It was brilliant. The theme song was brilliant. You need to have a theme song, guys.
And maybe it might be out of copyright now, so maybe we can use that for our
Sure, we'll
Agony
just use
Alice
that one.
section.
Yeah,
Perfect.
brilliant.
Great. Nice. So then what do we get
Shall I?
in?
Go on.
Please.
Okay, so we put a shout out and we said, what are your questions for Alice Sharp? What can she help you out with? And we have an excellent one here. This is from Christine of Cherry Tree Nursery in Glasgow. So I'm going to read it out as she's written it. My staff struggle to understand the benefits of loose parts and how this can enhance all areas. A good few are newly qualified and do not have any experience with the amazing world that is Alice Sharp. Please help! And there's 5 exclamation
5.
points there. That's why I read it like that.
Okay, Christine. Loose parts and I have a love-hate relationship.
Interesting.
And I have a love-hate relationship with them because I see massive benefit and value, but a lot of us don't see the purpose. And the word purpose is becoming more and more important to me alongside our why. Like, is there purpose to this? Children live chaotic lives. Their lives are a guddle, as we
It's not
say.
just children.
Well, exactly. A guddle. And actually,
guddle.
if even tonight, if I was going out and I open my wardrobe, I've got maybe 16 tops to choose from. I want somebody to peel some of that away for me.
Oh, yeah.
Just tell me I've got those 3 and I'll choose one, one of them. And the way we present loose parts is really important, because if you walk up to some of the loose part areas that I walk up to, it is overwhelming, completely and utterly annihilating my senses and my brain, and I can't see the way through that, so I just start to throw them, chuck them, and I don't know what to do with them.
There's an element
so
of
for
decision
me,
paralysis,
Yeah.
right?
I've started to put them in little baskets or little pockets or little purses, or wrap them in a cushion cover, or presenting me so that I'm kind of positively manipulating the purpose of the loose parts.
I love that.
And also kind of grouping them. If I notice 4 of my children are not very good with palmar grasp, I'll try and put loose parts that encourage palmar grasp when you're interacting with them. Or if they're not doing pincer grip, then I'll put lots of loose parts together that encourage pincer gripping. And so I'm looking to the skill bases, because I want there to be a point and a purpose, and an outcome, albeit it can be the child's decision of which outcome it is. But I feel as if we need to restrain and have a bit more structure to it. So that would be my tip for encouraging anybody who's on the beginning of their loose part journey to work through the exploration and experimentation, but then find a purpose to using them.
Amazing.
So for parts, we need a point, we need a purpose. And we need to consider presentation.
There you go.
Agony
Perfect.
Alice, parts presentation. Perfect.
Brilliant.
I've ruined your joke there. Sorry, Julia. She's been building that the whole time.
Came
It reminds
in
me
and
of
stole
that
my punchline.
punchline. It reminds me of that research that company did. I feel like I've seen on the internet, where they sort of presented 15 different flavors of marmalade in a shop, and nobody bought any. And then they, in the next shop down, had 3, and they sold out. It's the same thing, right? It's like too much choice.
Yeah.
We don't know what to do.
It's like in the nurseries, when we started to put everything we had, every resources to be out for the children to select. Well, actually, if you put out 5 different kinds of construction material, which have got probably 10 different attributes within them. That's 50 choices I have to make, and I'm 3 years old.
Amazing. Yeah, too much. Too much.
Too much for me.
I can barely work out how to clothe myself in the morning. You know?
Strange
And I'm
time
older.
to make that confession.
So, yeah, sorry about that. Well then, I think that was a pretty great start to our Agony Alice section.
Should we do
next-
the second?
Yeah.
Second question?
Yes. Oh gosh, we had another one. Well, this is a nice opportunity for a plug, actually. This
it
is
is.
Bernie Neal, area manager at Muddy Boots. She simply said, "I'd love to know more about how Alice Sharp is helping settings."
Oh God, in hundreds of different ways. Obviously, training mostly. We do loads of training, but we also walk through some of our training with nurseries. We'll go in and out and we will give them advice. We don't get ready for inspection. I don't do anything as formal as that, but when we're in, we'll reflect with them and we'll talk to them. Mostly, it's about mindset change and the staff thinking about if they talk about the child having agency, the staff need to have agency as well. So we're helping the staff be able to articulate, I think, more. And 3 nurseries in England and a couple up in Scotland as well have commented that during their inspection process, there's actually been comments, have you been on Alice's training? Because they can hear either the 4-day residentials down at Belong in Chester, they just had one and it was mentioned there. But because they can see the impact. And I think I don't ask them to change everything ever. And I look to what changes they think they need to make first. Like even yesterday, I presented 48 different texture troves. And before the delegates left, I insisted that they picked 3, that they didn't have to buy anything, they didn't have to ask anybody's permission, that they could physically go in and do today. And if they didn't have a basket, put it on a towel to define the area of play and put your treasure on that towel. And so it's the peeling, it's stop the noise, and it's going back to the simple play that we hugely benefit from.
Love it.
There's so much to say about that. Do we have time?
We don't have time.
We've got no time.
Mostly because I can no longer feel the entire right-hand side of my back.
Right.
At this stage, I'm worried about dislocating a hip, and Mikkel is looking hungry in the corner.
Okay, fair enough.
So I think that's it for the Agony Alice section this time round.
Thank you so
Difficult for the next person who's going to have to be the Agony Alice section.
Yeah.
But you know what? You were first, so you got to name the section.
Hey!
And it was perfectly punchliney, precariously...
Go on. Keep going.
Perfectly?
You
Said that
said that.
Okay. It worked.
A valiant effort.
If you two, those listening in the ether, would like to be part of our next... Not you two specifically.
You 2 listeners.
You 2 listeners. I'm not just like... If you, Bono, or The Edge, or the one on drums, would like to...
didn't even make... Okay.
If you would like to ask a question of our next guest, you can always email us in on tinychairpod@family.co.uk. That's family without the I, because we're keeping one eye on the children always. So, tinychairpod@family.co.uk. We also want to do like a wins and shout-outs section at the end, don't we?
We do.
So we don't have any wins and shout-outs next, but maybe next time around we'll have like things to celebrate.
As this is the first episode, we haven't got any yet. However, we're hoping that by the time we record the next one, we'll have some wins and shout-outs. So if you have just had an amazing inspection at your setting, if you have had an apprentice who's qualified, if anything.
You've helped a child through something difficult or...
anything you like. We want to share that with the rest of the sector and we want to shout you out. So in this space, that's where it will go.
Amazing. And that's
And
it.
is your next guest
We
a
don't.
surprise?
It is
It's a surprise.
It's
Don't
a
say we don't
surprise.
know. Don't.
It's totally a surprise, and it's
a
not at all
surprise.
that we
It's
haven't
not that
booked them
we
yet.
don't know, obviously. We absolutely know. It's just a secret.
No, we're just a surprise. We may also be surprised. Alice, that's honestly been like I sort of can't believe I got to spend the last period of time doing that and getting paid for it. That's been like the best hour of my and a bit of my week. So thank you so much for joining us, Alice. And where can people find you on the World Wide Web or places?
Or our website is alicesharp.co.uk. My Facebook is Adventures with Alice, and my Instagram is Alice Sharp Training. Ta-da!
Amazing.
Wonderful.
Alice.
And LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn and all that jazz as well, but yeah.
You're right, we have had an adventure with Alice
I've had
today.
an adventure with Alice.
Yeah. Alice, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
Well. What a podcast that was. Great first episode, I thought. How good was Alice, Julia?
I was so impressed. And what an effort she made with all those tiny chairs.
When she said to us, I'm not going to sit in a tiny chair, but I've got some tiny chairs. I had no idea what she meant. And that is worth checking out the video version alone. You can find it on YouTube and, search family without the I on Facebook, Instagram. We'll put clips on there and you can see how exquisite her tiny chair background was. Julia, we've got to thank some people, but thank you.
Thank you so much for saying thank you. Thank you.
And we also need to thank Mikkel, our wonderful video producer, audio producer, red chair painter. Truly a Mikkel of all trades.
He really is. And should we thank Alice, our very first ever guest?
How good was she? Thank you so much, Alice. And thank you to, all of you for listening. And if you would like to get in touch, please don't forget to email us on tinychairpod@family.co.uk. That's tinychairpod@family.co.uk. We want your agony aunt requests, your questions, your suggestions, your feedback, good, bad, and indifferent.
Not bad.
Not bad?
Not bad.
I'm okay to hear the bad stuff. I won't forward that on to Julia.
Fine.
And that's it. We'll see you next time. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.